Thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast, where we make adulting easier by making money easier. This is your host, Lauren, and I'm joined today by David and John Ottenschneider, the founders of Debt Free Guys and the hosts of the Queer Money podcast. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you for having us. This has been like a couple years in the making. I'm glad that we finally made this happen.
I know you guys are busy people. You just can't get on your schedule.
No, we're just aloof.
Well, you emailed me. No, actually, I think you messaged me on Twitter back when it was Twitter and said, let's get together and do a podcast together. And I was like, yeah, let me check with John. I'll get back to you. And then I didn't get back to you. And that was made aware to us this past week or 2 weeks ago that we are not responding back to our messages on Twitter. So I dug in there and found it. And I was like, yes, we'll do the podcast with you.
Yeah. What really happened was I had to hunt you down at your home in Toledo, Ohio, and force you to agree.
Force you. There's this crazy lady on our front yard.
Oh my God. Okay, so our goal for today is make adulting easier for listeners by discussing a personal finance topic, since managing money is a big part of adulting. So today, John and David, we're going to talk about house hacking. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about your personal finance journey?
How far back do you want to go?
Well, when were you born? No, just kidding.
We're Gen Xers, firm Gen Xers. I guess we can go back. So about a year and a half after David and I got together, we finally had our come to Jesus moment about our finances. We had just finished spending the weekend in Winter Park, Colorado, and we just had a blast up there. And we thought, we could really enjoy having a vacation home up here. We could come up here on the weekends, relax, have fun with each other. We could have friends come up with us, party with them, go skiing and snowboarding and all that. When we're not there, we would be the type of people who would let our friends and family use the place. And this is before Airbnb, but I kind of feel like in hindsight, if we had a place up there, we probably would Airbnb or Verbo it on occasion. And then we had to go home back to reality, to Denver, for work. And so while we drove back down to Denver, we started to have a conversation. And one of us asked the other, what can we afford? The idea was that we were going to buy land and build a house. We're like, we can't buy land and build a house. And then we got lowered in elevation, and we're like, maybe we can build something that already exists there. And then we got lower in elevation, and then we're like, no, we can't afford that. Maybe we can buy a condo or something small, like an apartment. No, we can't afford that. Got a little bit lower in elevation. We're like, well, maybe we can just go up there on weekends ourselves. Maybe we're just renters. Maybe that's who we are. And we pulled up to our driveway, got out of the car, walked down a flight of steps into our basement apartment. And as you might be guessing, we're getting more and more oxygen into our brain. So more and more clarity and reality is coming to us. And we walk into our basement apartment that we were renting from a friend. And we confessed to each other that we were financial messes. We couldn't even afford to go up there on the weekend. We probably couldn't have afforded the weekend that we just spent up there. I don't remember exactly, but my guess is that probably a lot of it was on credit card debt. And that was when we realized that between the two of us, we had $51,000 in credit card debt. And we were complete messes. We were in our mid-30s, renting a friend's basement apartment that we negotiated a deep discount on. And here we were at that point in time, we had about 15 years combined tenure in financial services. So here we were helping other people with their finances, but we were abysmal with our finances on our own. And that was kind of, I think, the start of our journey. I'm sure we can go back and talk about a lot of past trauma if you wanted to, but that was kind of sort of the impetus for eventually what evolved into Debt Free Guys and the Queer Money podcast.
David, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add that what John and I did is we realized that our lives, it was at that point, I think, and this has really depressed us, is that we realized that that point, our lives were not going in the direction that we wanted them to go in. We were having a lot of fun on a week-to-week basis, but long-term, we weren't seeing any prospects for having a fulfilling life. And I think that that's what that weekend and that's what that experience and that conversation really highlighted to us, was we could continue to do this on a regular basis, just keep having more and more and more fun and digging ourselves deeper and deeper into debt, but we'd never be able to get to the places that we were hoping to get to with the other goals in our lives. And we were seeing our friends do these things like getting married, having children, buying their first home, buying their second home. And I'm not talking about having a second home as in a vacation home and a regular home, but they were on this process of marching through the things that we wanted to do, but we weren't doing. And that was when we really said to ourselves, why are we financial messes, even though we have all of this information? We have all of this experience of talking to other people? Why are we the ones who are do as I say, not as I do kind of people? And that's when we said, okay, something about who we are is not getting us to the point of where we want to be. So we have to change who we are. And that's when I think it really became personal to us. What was it personally that was going on in our lives that was preventing us from having the financial life that we wanted?
So the first step naturally is realizing there's a problem. What's the next step after that?
David did a great exercise almost immediately. I think the next weekend, he grabbed all of our statements for every single account that we had. And to the extent that he could, he itemized all of our expenses for the previous 12 months. I think there was only about $5,000, maybe $3,000 he couldn't account for, which was probably ATM withdrawals. And let's be real, that was probably going to drinking. And he itemized all of our expenses. And we were just astonished with how we were spending our money. Had you asked us the quality of our life before we did that exercise, we would have said, yeah, things are good. We're happy, we're having a good time, making a little bit of progress here and there. But when we looked at all of our expenses over the previous 12 months, we were like, we are rock stars on paper. You wouldn't know it otherwise. But here we were spending literally thousands and thousands of dollars on wine alone, on happy hour, on dining out. Even we would spend $400 a week going grocery shopping on top of spending $400 a week going to dining out and happy hours. We had never been skinny in our lives. So I'm not sure exactly what was going on there, but it was just, we were like, why are we spending in such a way? And if we were truly happy with our lives, would we continue to need to spend this way? Or what is it that we're chasing? What's missing? And so that exercise was really sort of a slap in the face for us. It was shocking the week prior to realize how much debt we had between the two of us. It was even more depressing looking at our finances and thinking, if we were a little bit smarter with our cash flow, we wouldn't be in this situation. We actually could be a lot further ahead. So what that did was it started a really deep discussion of, well, how, like David said, how do we have all this theoretical knowledge? How do we have access to all these tools and resources, but we're not utilizing? And that's a much deeper personal question that people have to ask themselves.
And it's easy to look at this as purely financials, purely numbers. And I'm glad, John, you took it to what in our lives, what in ourselves is causing us to, what are we looking for? Did you ever find an answer to that?
We did. And I think that's, one of the things that I think we'll probably talk a little bit about further in the podcast is the personal side of personal finance. And that's what we really uncovered, was the personal side of personal finance. And for us, what that meant was understanding and uncovering our money stories. What does money mean to me? Why do I have these feelings about money, and why do I use money to do these particular things in my life? And I think that it took us a little bit of time, literally, I think maybe even a year or two, for us to really start to uncover, because I think what was starting to happen is we were masking a lot of our feelings with the things that we were doing with our money. We were spending money on alcohol and dining out and having fun and doing all these things. And that was really masking the true feelings that we had about ourselves. And they made us look good to ourselves and made us potentially look good to people around us. And that's what we really uncovered when we said, okay, we're going to dial all of this back. We had to confront some of the issues that were causing us to do those kinds of things. And what John and I have realized is that for both of us, the family situations that we were in, the time that we were raised, that in the time period that we were raised, we were both in situations where it was not okay to be gay men. And so we had family, we had churches, we had politicians, we had schools, everyone telling us that you're not an okay person. And so we were constantly looking for that self approval, that we wanted we wanted approval from other people. We couldn't do it for ourselves. We needed that approval from other people because we've been told all of our lives, we don't approve of you. So we were trying to prove to everyone else that we were just as good as everyone else. And the easiest way for anybody in this country to do that is to show how fabulous their lives are, right? That's why people post the kind of pictures they do on Instagram and Facebook and all the social medias, and telling people, where they're at and what they're doing, is because they want people to appreciate that they do have a good life, even though maybe they really don't think of that themselves. And so for us, that was it. We were trying to make those people who had bullied and picked on us forget that that's why they did it, and to maybe regret that they had done that. And secondly, once we did come out and we were out in our own community, the LGBT community, we felt this pressure to try to make sure that those people also approved us. And historically, the community, especially gay men, have been known as living fabulous lives because we are typically dual income, no kids. And so everybody thinks that we have these amazing, fabulous lives. Well, if you can't afford it, most of us use credit cards to make sure that everybody thinks we still have it.
So through this journey and through the Queer Money podcast and Debt Free Guys, have you found that everyone that gets into debt is doing so because of some unknown money story that they have?
We have found that that's the case for most people. We have to acknowledge that there are some people that do have an income problem and they have other challenges they have to deal with, and so a lot of this doesn't necessarily apply to them. Though we can all address our money story, because no doubt that sort of financial insecurity is creating a money story that will affect people in the future who do actually have an income problem. But we've found that most people have a spending problem, at least the people that we've worked with. And for most of us, if one of the exercises that we do have them do is the spending analysis exercise that David did for us, our first exercise. And for most people, they've got 1 to 3 outliers that are really throwing their budgets out of whack, that if they reined in or even cut out altogether, could really, really do a 180 on their financial situations. And it runs the gambit, right? So we were partying and buying designer clothes and whatnot, and we get that not everybody identifies with that story, even if they're part of a gay couple. But we've coached some gay couples who they did not realize how much money they were spending throwing birthday parties for their kids and sending their kids to birthday parties, like thousands and thousands of dollars a year. And when you ask them why they were doing that, well, it was another level of sort of approval seeking. They wanted all of the straight parents to know that even though they're a gay couple, their kids can have all of the great experiences, and that their kids should be invited to the birthday parties because they provide some of the best birthday gifts, right? So they were all, everybody sort of masking some sort of pain, seeking some sort of validation, very often with the outliers in their spending. And so that was a long answer to yes.
And John, you said earlier that when you guys went through your spending exercise, that if you'd been a little more frugal or a little more cognizant of what was going on, you wouldn't have had that $51,000 of credit card debt. Does that mean then that those 1 or 2 items for you guys kind of stuck out of what you needed to change, and then you could pay down the credit card debt?
Yeah. So we reined in our spending. So for us, this isn't necessarily the case for everybody, but the debt that we had caused a lot of anxiety for us, and we wanted to do whatever we had to do to get rid of it as fast as possible. So we were able to pay that off in just under 3 years, I think, 2 and 8 months or 7 months. So we reined in all of our expenses, even the gigantic outliers, as well as even the categories we weren't necessarily egregious in. We just became more cognizant of them and managed them a little more meticulously than we had in the past.
86% of people who pay off debt attribute the fact that they stuck to a budget as the primary reason why they were able to pay off their debt. And you brought up this comment about us being aware because of doing the spending analysis, and we call that being money conscious. We were conscious about what's happening with our money, and we live in a society today where they have made purchasing really slick and easy. So we aren't conscious. We aren't conscious that we're handing over $50 or $100. We're just swiping a card or putting our phone up there, and the numbers just go. And we don't think about it until we either see a statement or we see our bank balance. And then we are concerned about it. And you can even go further as to being unconscious by never checking any of those and just hoping and praying that you always have money in your account. And for most of us, if we have those features set up to just charge to a credit card or some sort of overdraft or something like that, then you just continue to rack up the debt, and you don't have any knowledge of it happening until it gets to be a really big number and it starts to hurt.
So you went on like a diet, like a money crash diet, it sounds like.
We did. And we made a big mistake too, because as soon as we were done paying off our debt, we went back to our normal lifestyle. And then within about a year, we're like, where the hell did this $6,000 come from? Right. So which is very often what people do when they go on a diet, right? They go on a very strict diet. They're like, once I reach this particular goal, whether it's the time on the calendar or a particular weight on the scale or whatever, and then we regress and go back to what we were doing before. And we're like, what happened? I thought I fixed it. No, we made that monumental mistake. And so we were like, okay, what we had to do actually was create I know everybody hates this, it's kind of cliche, but create a lifestyle and then stick with that lifestyle throughout the duration of our lives.
What were some features of the new lifestyle?
Well, number one, being more money conscious, of being more clear with where all of our money was going. The other thing that I think was probably very critical for us is figuring out what we most wanted. Up until we sort of had that come to Jesus moment, we were just spending arbitrarily, not necessarily knowing why we were spending. We never actually had the discussion of, well, what is it we want to achieve? What are our hopes and dreams? What are our goals in life? Short term, near term, long term, whatever. And it wasn't until we got clear on what our goals were that we didn't really have any sort of guide to work toward. And so that sort of having that sort of on the horizon of what we wanted to achieve, then we could start having better discussions when we were in the day-to-day interacting with money. And a popular question that we ask ourselves is, do we want to have this margarita here? At that time, it was Denver. Here it's Toledo, Ohio. Or do you want to have that margarita in Puerto Vallarta? And 95% of the times, it's always in Puerto Vallarta. So we're like, okay, well, then maybe we don't have the margarita here, or maybe we choose another option so that we can go to Puerto Vallarta in another year or two.
So where does house hacking come into all of this?
Well, that's a good question. So what we decided to do was that we paid off our debt, and then after we made our mistake and accrued $6,000 more of debt, we paid that off. And like we said, we decided this was a lifestyle. So what we decided to do was that we maintained all of the tips and strategies that we executed to pay off of our debt. We continued that so that we could funnel that much more money to our 401ks. And then it was a couple of years after that we decided to launch Debt Free Guys and the Queer Money podcast. So we had our stock market investing, which eventually at some point will be fund our lifestyle in the future. We have our small business investing, but we wanted to diversify even beyond that and have a portfolio of real estate of investment properties that we could live off of as well. And we had considered all sorts of options for getting into real estate. And it was really a confluence of just where we were at in our lives, physically, geographically, as well as where we were financially and what our future goals were. It kind of made sense for us to house hack a property, a duplex ideally. And that was what we found for ourselves in Toledo. If we had more money, or had we been more rooted in the place that we were living at the time, we might have just bought an investment property that we weren't house hacking. But just like I said, all sorts of things going on in our personal lives, like we need to move anyway. We need to cut some of our expenses. We want to fund other aspects of our lives, and we also want to get into real estate. So why don't we do this and hopefully get ourselves a lower interest rate? That part didn't actually work out because we did it wrong, but overall everything has worked out.
We didn't necessarily do it wrong. It was just the wrong time, right? We didn't buy our property until June of 2022, when interest rates had already started to go back up.
Yeah, well, it's still low comparatively, right, nowadays.
Yeah, like I said, we're children of the '80s, so we remember when it was double digits for mortgage rate.
I know my mom always says that. She's like, my first mortgage rate was 12%. I signed an adjustable because how could it go higher? And then it went to 14. I'm like, okay, but I mean, the house was $20,000.
Right, exactly.
Her first house was $20,000. And I think she said her salary was 18. And
Oh
that's not
wow,
how houses are anymore. It's not like,
no.
even if you make 100 grand, the average house is like 400. That's very different than it was back then.
Well,
So
you
that's
just looked
what I
up.
want to point out to people.
What was the average you just looked up yesterday?
Yeah, the median home price, sale price of homes in 2022 was $540,000, right? I mean, that's just crazy, but we know that there is a supply issue, so especially supply issue on the starter family. And that's, new homes that are being built, only 8% of new homes that are being built are under 1,400 square feet. So there is just a supply issue on that lower end. There are plenty of homes that are being built that are $5, $6, $7, $800,000, $1 million. Those kinds of homes are being built up every single day. And there isn't a lot of movement of people from the starter homes into those homes, or at least not enough for the supply to be available for those who want their first starter home.
Well, and there's not a lot of incentive to move now if you have to give up say a 3 or 4% interest rate and get a 7%.
No,
Exactly.
and that's why we're still here in part.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's part of the reason also why we're house hacking. The first time John and I did house hacking was when we owned our condo for a short time period. I think it was about 8 or 9 months. We had a roommate who, it was a guy that worked at the same company as us, but he lived in a different city, but would come to Denver for 2 weeks out of the month. He was a mid-level executive, and we had been talking with him, and just had this conversation with him. And he told us that he was paying $1,400 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment that he was living in 2 weeks out of the month. And this was back in 2009, 2010, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
When it was. So he was paying $1,400 a month, and that was a sizable amount.
That's a
And
lot.
so John and I had a conversation, and we said, you know what? We have an extra bedroom that we don't use. We should let's see if he would like to rent the bedroom for 2 weeks out of the month. We were like, we can deal with having a roommate 2 weeks out of the month. And we did that for that time period. And to be honest, that money that we made furnished all new furniture for our condo. And it was we didn't necessarily use it to reinvest back into real estate, but it was an income source for us that allowed us to use it in buying something that we really wanted. And to be honest, we still own that furniture because we bought classic pieces of furniture with that money, and we absolutely love them still.
So for anybody that doesn't know, house hacking is owning a property, living it, and renting part of it out. So you talked about the roommate situation. We've also talked about the duplex situation, and that's where you guys are now. And it's a top bottom duplex. You live in the top, your tenants at the bottom. Do you mind sharing a little bit of the numbers, purchase price, rent, mortgage payment, those kinds of things, so people can get an idea of why house hacking is so powerful?
The numbers that I'm going to share here are what was appropriate for our situation. John and I were looking for a property that we didn't have to invest a ton of money into. We were looking for something that is typically called turnkey, right? It's almost move-in ready. We did have to go through and paint and do make a few adjustments to the units, but we purchased a 2,400 square foot duplex. So there's 1,200 square feet of living space on each of them for $135,000. After all in, we were at about 142 for purchasing it. We've put probably another about $5,000 into it. Because of us putting a down payment, our mortgage is $942 a month, and our tenant downstairs pays $895 a month for the two. That's it's kind of funny because it went from being at market rate to being below market rate in 1 year here in Toledo. But it was at market rate. We also collect $50 a month for water because the water in the property is not split. It's all on one bill. So we charge $50. I'm probably going to have to adjust that because I've noticed water prices have gone up and usage has gone up. So, but basically, that covers the majority of the mortgage. So John and I are responsible then for the other things. We have a lawn service, so we spend about $100 to $125 a month on that. We set aside money every month for capital improvements. We do have to make some capital improvements. We are going to have to put in a new driveway, which will probably cost us anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000. We know that we are saving up money for those kinds of things, but the way that the numbers work for us right now is that it didn't actually. We don't live in here for free, but it did reduce our cost of living down to about $400 to $500 a month from what we put into the property every month ourselves.
For a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,200 square foot place. That's pretty good in 2023.
Yeah.
And you guys were able to do that because you also are location independent, right?
Correct. And that was one of the things I was going to say is some of you who are listening, especially if you're in Orange County or suburb of Philadelphia, New York,
Tampa,
or something like that.
Tampa, Florida.
You're like, where in the hell in this country can you buy a 2,400 square foot duplex for $135,000? And I'll just say that. There are a lot of cities that many people are not willing to look at or don't know are out there. There's a lot of them are Midwest Rust Belt areas. You look all across from just outskirts of Philadelphia all the way to Chicago. In between there's a massive number of cities that have homes that are like this. And if you are location independent, if you have a remote job or primarily remote job, this is a perfect opportunity for you to move to a place where you can get into a property and you can house hack or you can buy a complete home here in this area and many of these areas for somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000 to $200,000.
For context, the 2 years prior, we were living in Las Vegas, right off of the Fremont Street experience. When we were looking for property out there, we're like, this is so far out of our capabilities. We would be house poor pretty quickly. And it wouldn't allow us to be able to make the progress with our personal finances as well as our goal of building a portfolio. So that's part of why we had to move, because it just wasn't really an opportunity for us there.
So a lot of people, they try to house hack, buy a duplex or something like that, live there for a year, move out, get a new primary house hack, another duplex, triplex, or quad or something like that. What's your plan from here?
Well, that was our plan. So we're running up on next month. It'll be a year that we're here. So that's not working out. Rates kind of went a little bit against us.
Yeah.
I'll just be transparent. Our business income was not what it was the 2 previous years prior, in part because of inflation and the obsession with recession. Hopefully now that's sort of abating and we can turn that around. So the numbers just didn't make sense for us to do that. Also, I don't know that we're having an Oprah moment here. I don't know. David, this might be a surprise to David. I don't know how ready I am to actually physically move myself personally. We've become kind of accustomed here. We've made some adjustments to our particular unit that I'm not quite ready to give up just yet and have to start that whole process over again. We also have 2 dogs that are kind of may have made themselves comfortable here. So if we were to go to another property to house hack, I understand the financing might make sense, but we have to also look at the emotional impact it's going to have. It's got to be somewhat worth it to me. David might not agree with that.
Yeah, just real quick. If you move into a place, you have an interest rate that's approximately 1 point lower. So let's say this is just an example. Let's say a rental property right now is 8%. Primary residence might be at 7%, and you can put a lower down payment down if you move in. So those are the reasons that people do this. But David, I would like to give you some time to rebut what John said. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I don't know what he's doing, but I'm moving out. No, I'm
Oh no, the first
No.
live divorce. Oh no.
No, our goal is to eventually have several properties here in Toledo. And depending on where things go with the political environment in the country and with our lives where we want to go, we may replicate this in another city, or we may find our forever home and settle down. And that forever home may not be in this country.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say about that.
That's okay.
I hope you guys feel comfortable staying in this country. Let me put it that way.
Just to be perfectly honest, John and I have traveled. We've been fortunate to be location independent and have traveled the world.
We call it geo-liberated. We haven't been using that term, but we call it geo-liberated.
I like it. I like it. That's a good one.
And we fell in love with a small seaside town south of Barcelona that is relatively affordable. For context, in 2019, 2020, from December to February, we spent 3 months living there, renting a two-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 3-story house in town that was literally a 5-minute walk from less than that. It was like a 2-minute walk to the beach. And we rented it for $1,100 a month. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful time of year to be there. The temperatures were very moderate. It was kind of like living in Northern California for temperatures during the wintertime. And we were just like, okay, maybe this is where, instead of building the vacation home in the mountains of Colorado, now it's buying a condo and living in Sitges, Spain. And it's just, we feel that's every time we go there, and I'll say every time we've been there, we've been there 6 times. And every time we get there, we're like, this just feels like home. And so, like many others in the U.S. who are thinking about where they want to retire and live out the rest of their lives, there's a lot of us who are looking overseas, not only because it's affordable, but because we can be in parts of the world where we are really enjoying a lifestyle that we probably couldn't in the United States. And that's just the reality of where we are.
Yeah, that feeling of being home, it's like, for me, it's something like in your chest almost. You're like, oh, I didn't even know I was like holding anxiety there, and it just all relaxes, and I can kind of feel it, and I can kind of see it with the picture that you painted.
Yeah. And if that doesn't make you jealous enough, if you caught the date range that David said that we spent 3 months over in Spain, we were also one of the first people to catch COVID. So that's cool.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was wondering, I was like, did you come back? Did you have to come back? Was the plan to stay longer? Is what I was wondering.
No, we were already coming back. But it was a little bit helter-skelter there for a minute.
Yeah.
We
thought COVID.
The border was going to be shut on us, and we had to.
Right.
Because
you caught COVID when they didn't know what COVID was.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, you must have had it before then.
And they had no idea what the cough was that everybody was getting.
Well, and just a little bit more context. When we were there and we were sick, we went to the doctor's office, and it was literally $40 a piece for John and I to go to the doctors without health insurance.
Not the copay. We're not talking about copay.
This is,
we're not talking about you go to the United States, you pay $40. No,
right.
We didn't no more bill after that.
And we just went to the doctor, and
we got cough. She gave us cough lozenges with that, and I'm guessing medicated and cough syrup.
Yeah,
it didn't do any good because it was COVID and they didn't know it. But
well, sure, not their fault. Not that there's much you can do now, even.
Yeah. And what's interesting is my sister and our brother-in-law just recently retired, and they're traveling the United States trying to find a place to live, and because they've spent most of their lives living in central Pennsylvania, and they're just like, we didn't know Alabama and Florida and Louisiana could be so expensive. Where they want to live is more tropical and more touristy, I would imagine. And it's just very expensive to be able to live and stretch your dollars out in the more ideal locations in the country. And then if you're a gay couple on top of that, some of those locations are just not welcoming. So they're not even an option. So it just makes it even harder. It's one of the recurring questions we get a lot is, where can I retire as a gay couple or an LGBT person and feel completely safe and comfortable and accepted? That's also affordable. The two just don't really go together.
They're there. We just have to find them.
Yeah, it's another layer of complexity. Well, is there anything else you guys want to add before we wrap up?
You know, I will add, we will start talking about house hacking, and there's actually a wide variety of ways to house hack. It doesn't have to be you have a roommate. It doesn't have to be that you have a duplex. House hacking can be the original form of Airbnb, where you rent out your property while you're not there. So you can, you know, if you're going to be gone for a month or you're going to be gone for several weeks, can you open your home up to other people being there and make some money? Do you have a garage space that you can rent out? Do you have an attic space that you can,
even for storage?
Yeah, the storage industry in this country is a multi-billion-dollar industry because we just have so much crap that we can't separate ourselves from, and people are always looking for a place to store that. If you have if you live in a condo building and you have a garage space that you're not using, rent it out. There's a lot of different ways to house hack. If you live in a city that's very touristy or has conventions, and you know that you're going to be able to get a lot of money during one particular week, let's say, for example, a convention is there or a big sporting event is there, can you partner up with a friend or another family and say, hey, let's rent out my place for whatever it is? I mean, I remember back when the Democratic Convention was in Denver, people were renting out their apartments for $800 a night. And I was just like, $800 a night for a whole week is going to pay your rent for a month, maybe 2 or 3 months, right? So get together with somebody else, a friend, a family that you know, and say, hey, let's do this together. I'll move in with you for for a week, and we'll rent out my place and we'll split the cost. You know, there's a lot of different ways to house hack, and this is a way that you can get into real estate investing. I would say if I look back and I say to myself, what would I do all over again if I was first starting out? And this is what I would tell every kid coming out of college or who has graduated with some sort of certificate or something like that, and you have a job where you're earning some money. The first thing is invest in your 401k. The second thing is figure out a way that you can house hack and buy some sort of real estate. You know, if you have to have 3 or 4 roommates, do it. You're going to love it 10 years from now.
Yeah, it's easier to do that in your 20s than in your 50s.
Yeah.
John's like, ask me how I know. That's a great ad, David. Thank you. And why don't you guys tell people how they can get in touch with you as well?
We are the Debt-Free Guys and the Queer Money everywhere. So go to debtfreeguys.com or queermoneypodcast.com, or that's our handle on most social media. So you can go there and reach us, or you can direct message us or send us an email through our websites.
Perfect. And you guys can follow me on Twitter at Adulting is Easy, Instagram at Adulting is Easy Real, YouTube at Adulting is Easy. And if you liked this episode, you may also like episode 138 with Justin from The Price of Avocado Toast, where we talked about blowing through a settlement, getting into debt, and crawling back out better and stronger on the other side.
We love avocado toast.
I know, I love it. I can't wait to see him soon. So thanks again for listening, everybody. Hopefully me and the Debt-Free Guys have made adulting a little easier for you.